So this is going to be day 9.
Hmm.
Anything we should be talking about before we launch into beeps?
Well, yeah, there's one thing I'm going to tell you. I just made the executive decision 5 seconds ago.
Okay.
Um, so we've been talking about names, and I've been feeling a little bit guilty, actually, and a little bit deceptive, and I don't like feeling that way. And so I went and talked to my friend Chris Tollefson, who is my friend, and got his permission to tell you all that the good voice that we've talked about a few times.
So hang on before we do that.
Yep.
I'm interested in knowing the end of this story, but I don't want you to feel obligated.
I no, I well, do I feel obligated? I feel a little bit obligated, but not because, but it's not, I don't feel pressure from you.
Okay. That's really what I meant by
Okay.
by pressure.
Um, the voice, the good voice, I don't remember. We gave it some random name, which
We
I
called it
don't,
John.
okay, whatever it was. Its name is Chris, and it's called Chris because it's his voice.
Okay.
Wow.
And
So Chris is that you talked to is a real person
he's a real person. He's a
that's
good friend of mine.
Known to Agnes
No,
apparently.
and Chris is definitely known to Agnes.
He's our
Okay.
colleague and he's
Okay.
great. So that's why I reacted the way I did because that's kind of cool that Chris is a voice.
He knows this, of course, and I talked to him the other day, and I said, Chris, I'm feeling a little bit guilty about not sharing this information, which might be considered relevant, but I didn't want to do it without his permission,
Fair enough.
and he he said that it was fine.
Okay.
So we can call it Chris. I don't, yeah, we can. That's who it is.
Okay. What I would say is that as a general rule, people who are involved in these studies are delighted to have them use their real names. And people think that's a little bit remarkable, but I don't actually think of it as remarkable. And I might explain why I think it's not remarkable. And that is that the effort that we are involved in here has to do with truth pretty close to a capital T. It's not all the way to a capital T, obviously, but we're trying to get Michael's experience right, trying to get it in high fidelity without pinning him down to anything like a diagnosis or a score on a test or whatever else.
Well, that's good because I have enough of that in my life.
Yeah. And I think people are justifiably reluctant to be categorized into some category or other, even if that category is deserved for whatever reason, but because the category carries with it implications that are not personally relevant to Michael.
Right. All
And
that is true. Yep.
but what we're doing here, I think, is totally personally relevant to Michael. And the Michaels that I work with generally think, well, that's fine. I don't really care whether people. I'm happy to have people understand what the real Michael is. What disturbs me, most people would say, is when you say you remember this category, whatever that category is, then people draw inferences from that category and
Yes, they do.
distort the actual Michael.
Yep.
And
That all it makes complete sense to me. And I mean, I do think it's sort of, I mean, I don't know, from my point of view, it's kind of relevant that it's his voice. He's been a friend for well over 20 years. And that does, in ways that we've already talked about, it obviously colors my experience of that in a certain way. And I was feeling like I was withholding that information. I was withholding that information.
right.
I also felt like I had good reasons to withhold it, but I was feeling a little bit, maybe not deceptive isn't quite the right word, but not fully forthcoming, and that felt kind of icky to me.
Okay.
Um, anyway, that's where we are. So we can call it Chris if we have need to call it anything in the future.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And
I mean, that also, I mean, for whatever it's worth, that colors my understanding of your experience, assuming that it's not just Chris's voice, but that it talks the way Chris talks and so forth. I mean, I don't know if that's an assumption I'm allowed to make. Probably not. but
It doesn't quite talk the way he talks, but
okay.
um
Maybe it colors my experience in the misleading way then. I don't know.
um because it's not really his personality.
Gotcha. It's just
Um
his voice.
it's just his voice, yeah.
Okay.
And I might comment that the probably and it is probably true that the real Chris talks to the real Agnes in a different way than he talks to the real Michael.
That's almost surely true.
And
Yeah.
and that is why I always worry when people say, "Oh, I can understand more about
Mhm.
that," because I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessarily true. You know, you
Well,
talk to girls different from you talk to boys. You talk to long-term colleagues, right, well, longer different from short-term colleagues or whatever. Or all those things are
yeah, that's probably right. I think Agnes and I probably have not the same, but similar relationships to Chris. I mean, I've known him for much longer than she has, but and he and I have been through stuff that she and he have not been through, etc. But
right.
and vice versa, I'm sure.
And I would say what Agnes knows about Chris is going to color her
Yeah, I
understanding
mean,
every time you mention Chris. She hears Chris in a somewhat different way than you intend Chris. And that is unalterably true, probably minorly so, maybe majorly so in some ways. I don't actually know, but
yeah, that's all fair.
but
Um,
but we don't need to slide it under the rug. We should be explicit about that.
that's
And
all
I
that.
also, I mean, I think I agree that Michael experiences a different version of Chris than I do, surely. But I also think there's some overlap
Ab-
between those versions. And we
Absolutely.
sometimes experience Chris together, in fact.
Absolutely.
All
Right.
true. All true.
Right. And it is no doubt true that the overlap is greater, or I shouldn't say no doubt, I should say probably true that the overlap is greater than the idiosyncratic.
That seems like it's probably right. Yeah.
But what I don't want us to do is to assume that that's the truth.
Hmm.
Yep.
It probably is the truth, but DES tries to keep the probably is separate from the actually.
Right.
uh,
Right. Okay.
So on to number one.
On to number one. This is all this morning. It was early morning at this point. I was actually, um, I, I had just put the, I just turned on the beeper, and I kind of had, this is all context. I had kind of absent-mindedly started to put the, uh, the earbud in my right ear, and then realized that it doesn't go in my, it doesn't go in my right ear, it goes in my left ear. And I had just said it fits in your left ear. And then I had just realized it's really early morning. I'm the only person awake right now. I wasn't sure if I had said that out loud or not, but I was worried that I had, which would have potentially, been disturbing to people trying to sleep around me. That's all background. Um, and then I said, uh, consciously, innerly, not out loud, because of what had just transpired. It's eared, not handed. I don't know why I had that thought, but anyway, I said it's eared, not handed. Um, and I was walking at that time, and I was hearing my footsteps. Um, I think just as part of this general awareness of not making noise, I was hearing my own footsteps, and I was hearing the dishwasher running. So the inner speech was definitely inner. It was consciously inner, and it was productive in the sense that I was saying the words. I was not hearing the words.
And is the inner speech the most prominent portion, or are they
Yes. The inner speech is the most prominent portion. That's what I was paying the most attention to. But I definitely was hearing the footsteps in the dishwasher as well.
60, 20, 20,
Yeah,
70,
that sounds,
15,
yeah,
something?
60, 20, 20 is probably right.
Okay. And when you say that the speech was inner, do you mean that as a fact, this was inner speech, or do you mean that as an experiential, I experience?
It was experientially inner. I was very consciously making sure I said it only in my head and not out loud.
So not only was it experientially inner, it was experientially premeditatedly inner,
Yes.
or
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say by consciously inner. Yes. I had I was making sure that I did not speak out loud for fear of waking other people up and for fear that I had just spoken out loud, but I wasn't sure.
okay. And so is the premeditation a separate thing from the speaking, or is it that I
No,
am
no, it was just intentionally inner
in,
speaking.
intentionally inner? Okay.
And there wasn't like a moment before where I said, "Oh gosh, the next thing you say, you better make it not out
Right.
loud."
Okay. All right, then I'm good about that portion. Agnes, you got questions about the inner
I
speaking?
I have a question about the inner speaking that's kind of arising as a consequence of our conversation last time about the inner hearing. So last time, Michael said that with the cello example, there's experientially no difference for him between hearing, sorry, that this isn't hearing the cello as if there's a cellist in the room with him and what it would mean to imagine the cello. And then Russ, in his comments, kind of gave an example of a different person who is able to imagine that. And we said that Michael doesn't have that distinction. Um, and I was wondering whether there's a parallel with innerly speaking. In other words, Michael, do you have a distinctive experience of innerly speaking that is different from outwardly speaking?
In this case, yes. I should preface, well, it's too late for prefacing. I should say that that distinction that you're talking about, I don't feel like I have a full grasp of that. I didn't feel like that when we talked about it last time, and I still don't feel that way.
Mm.
But I can say with a great deal of confidence that there was no hearing involved here. So I know it's a fact of the world that sometimes I speak innerly, and by that I mean just not outerly, and I hear it as well as if it were out loud. This was not that kind of experience. There was no hearing at all involved here. I was just thinking the words without, but I was thinking them in the cadence of normal speech. It wasn't like they were all present to me at once or something like that. So they came in an order, roughly the correct amount of time, passing for each thinking of each word. But there was no auditory experience associated with that thinking at all. The only auditory experience I was having was the footsteps in the dishwasher.
And that's
Does that answer your question? Because
yeah, I think it does
okay.
actually. And that's, would you say that that's how you know that it's inner, like that it's only innerly, or do you have like a an experience of the innerliness of the speech um, that is distinct from just not hearing it also?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure what it would, I'm not sure, and this may be related to my sort of lack of fully grasping what this distinction is supposed to be, but um, I don't think there's some property of innerliness
Mm.
that is attached to this experience. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm inclined to say that's the case, that there wasn't something like that. It was inner, it was not out loud, that's for sure.
So what I would say about this line of questioning is I thought about having this line of questioning myself, and I didn't do it, and I didn't. Well, I what I started it, and I asked him whether this was whether the premeditatedness of it, the intentionaliness of it, whatever, was totally present to him, and his answer seemed to me to be compellingly, convincingly yes. This was on purposely inner speaking. And then I decided that the questions that Agnes wanted to know the answer to was, well, I'm really interested in just regular inner speech when it's not premeditatedly inner. Is there a characteristic of that kind of speech
Mm.
that would make it recognizably inner? And I thought I didn't think I could get an answer to that because this speech was premeditatedly inner.
Right. I actually, but putting all that together is starting to clarify something that was unclear for me before. I stand by everything I said. I'm just telling you that this was a helpful 5 minutes of discussion for me.
And I don't doubt that at all. And I it wouldn't surprise me if the conversations that we've been having are helpful to you in some way because I think we're examining your inner experience in ways that probably are more careful than you've ever done, even though you've been living for however many years.
I think at one point I forget a lot of things, but I didn't forget that you said I'm 50, so we're going to say 50.
So does that answer your question, Agnes? Is that you
So
satisfied with that?
I'm not sure. Well, I think my question to Michael is answered. I'm not sure I fully understand your point. Is your point that I'm not understanding the connection between my question and your the premeditatedness of the experience somehow preempting my line of questioning for you? I don't know if that's important or if that's worth talking about, but I don't fully follow that.
I think it's a fundamentally important question, worth probably spending a minute to talk about.
Okay.
What I think is naturally occurring inner inner speech recognized to be inner is totally common among almost everybody, but maybe not among Michael. And it would be interesting, it would be totally interesting to me to understand how it is that most people can innerly speak and recognize that they're innerly speaking, and Michael doesn't make that recognition. That would be totally interesting to me. But I also think that premeditatedly inner and regular inner are likely to be very different from each other. And that I wouldn't be able to find anything about the question that I thought would be interesting, which is sort of the naturally occurring innerliness of speaking from asking about this particular sample. Because this particular sample was not naturally occurring inner, this was premeditatedly inner.
So the premeditatively inner speech is less interesting than the naturally occurring inner
Abs
speech.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And that's a big deal for me because most psychological and philosophical probably investigations are about premeditatedly whatever. So we put people into a scanner and we say elephant innerly, and then we think, well, that's inner speech. Well, I just don't think that's true. I think saying elephant on demand is not anything at all like reminding myself I have to buy bread on the way home or whatever, which I might naturally do. But the business, the psychology and the philosophy, I think business doesn't make that distinction clear enough for my taste.
I
So
don't know that so maybe you've already guessed this. I'm starting to understand these distinctions better as a result of this conversation. So there's that helpfulness. I'm not very confident that you're ever going to get an answer to this question because when I speak in a way to myself in a way that is inner in the sense of not being outer, I'm not usually aware of that distinction unless it's premeditated. Not premeditated isn't quite the right word, but unless it's self-conscious, unless I'm conscious in the moment, like I'm intentionally, like I was in this moment, intentionally speaking. Now there is this difference. Um, and I can do it right now also because I just did it. There you go. Um, when I consciously think to myself, don't say these words out loud, I don't hear anything. I just think the words. And that's what happened in this case. I was thinking the words, but there was no auditory correlate of that at all. I don't know
And
if that's helpful or not, but
and by
anyway.
in this case, you mean it's eared, not handed?
Yes, those were the words, and they were there was no auditory aspect to that inner speaking.
So what I understood about that was that there was a speaky aspect of that. I'm speaking those words. I'm not just thinking those words in a linear sense. I am experiencing myself as speaking those words.
Yes,
I am not experiencing myself as hearing those words, and I am intentionally requiring myself not to utter them aloud or
right.
something.
And I think it's likely, but I don't know. But what I did a moment ago do a very quick experiment and think some words to myself, and I know I didn't say them out loud. And when I did that, now of course I was paying much closer attention to what was going on. I noticed that there was some muscular movement in my mouth and throat that went along with those thinking those words. I don't know if I can't say that was true in the beep that we're talking about because I wasn't paying any attention to that. Um, but it was true just now.
Well, that's a good example of why I think this is a very important conversation that we're having in general. And that is that I think when one does an experiment, whether it's a natural experiment like you just did, or whether it's a premeditated experiment like in a scanner, say elephant, then people discover that there is musculature involved.
Mhm.
But I think that's artifact of the premeditation.
Oh, it very well could be, yes.
And so I think most of the time when people innerly speak, there's no musculature involved. I think for most people,
And I'm
whether that
certainly not in a position to affirm or deny that. Yeah.
whether that's true for Michael, I don't know. And and what I would say is, Michael, you started your prefaced your last salvo by saying, well, you're not going to find out the answer to your question. I that question is not the most fundamentally interesting question to me. I'm totally interested in what is distinctive about Michael's experience. I'm not particularly interested in the speech aspect of it. I am interested in the speech aspect of it to the extent that it is part of Michael's experience.
Right.
But I would not be disappointed if I didn't get the answer to that particular aspect of it.
Right. Okay. That all makes sense.
So I mean, just to say why I raised the question that I did, despite the fact that it was premeditated. I mean, first of all, I think it's interesting, like the conversation we had last time about um, the hallucinating the cello and what that's like for Michael, and the Michael saying, I don't know what it means to imagine the cello as opposed to hallucinate it. To me, that raised a question about what is possible for Michael to experience in the realm of innerly speaking. And so even though this is premeditated, I think it's interesting to know, like, okay, well, in the case of the premeditated, does he have an experience that is distinct from the experience of outwardly speaking?
And
And then,
the
and
answer is
I,
yes, because there's no
Mhm.
auditory aspect to it.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course then there's a further question when it's the further question, which I think is the one that is more interesting to Russ, is when it's not premeditated. So
Right.
that's anyway, that was what was motivating my question.
Got it. Is that fan too loud?
I
Can't hear
can't
it
hear
at
it.
all.
I
Okay.
can't hear it at all.
I'm I'm really depressed at how warm it is. I had to turn the fan on.
It's
I'm
getting
in
cold,
I'm
getting
in my
colder here.
office and this is the hottest room of the house. And we don't have air conditioning in my house. So when the summertime comes, this office is roasting and I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, getting cooler here today. So at the same moment as this beep was at the same moment as this it's eared, not handed is spoken, I'm also hearing my footsteps
Yes.
and hearing the dishwasher.
Yes.
And those are both auditory experiences.
Yes.
So it's not like I am feeling myself walking. I am hearing my
No, I
footsteps.
wasn't really feeling the walking. I was just hearing it.
Okay. And is there anything more to be said about that?
Um, not not by me.
Seems like this is natural hearing. I hear the footsteps
It's
as they are. I hear the dishwasher as it is.
totally natural hearing. Yes.
Okay. And that's recognized as being outer
Yeah.
and in the moment.
Yeah. I was explicitly paying attention to sound right then because of my concern for the sleeping people in the house.
So there might be some premeditation that seeps into this aspect of the
Well,
experience
there's
as well.
certainly some intentionality. Like I was conscious of the noise that I was making and therefore just conscious of whatever noise there is, period.
Okay, fair enough. Then I'm good about number one.
Me too.
Number two.
Okay, number two, I was sitting on a stump in my yard, well, the stump has been there for a long time, but it hasn't been a stump until recently. It was part of a tree. Um, and um, I was thinking of sending my son to the hardware store to get some borate because I'm contemplating possibly trying to preserve this stump because I kind of like it. And but I wanted to be able to I wanted to be sure that they had it. So I was on my phone. I was heading in my car when it occurred to me maybe I'll send him to the store. So I sat down on the stump, was on my phone on the website of the hardware store and looking to see if they had borate. And I was having trouble navigating the website. And I just before the beep I had seen there was a sentence and I couldn't get it back after the beep happened. So I'm not exactly. I wasn't. This is all right before the beep. I wasn't. I'm not 100% sure that this is the correct sentence, but it was something to the effect of, "Here's what professionals who searched for borate bought." And I was annoyed with that and annoyed with their crappy website. And I'm sorry that I said something nasty at that point. I said "fuck you" while I was closing the browser. I don't know who I was saying it to, but I was saying it in the general direction of the hardware store. Um, and that's it. That's all that was in my experience was the closing of the browser. I had tapped on my phone to close it while I was saying that.
So I say fuck you at the moment of the beep. That's what's it.
Yeah, the beep happened like I think right in the middle of that. Yeah.
Okay. And that is spoken
Yes.
aloud or innerly.
Don't know. But sorry, I haven't answered I know some of the questions and I've been trying to answer them ahead of time. That was spoken and I heard it. I was outside at this point, So I wasn't worried about sleeping people, and I had stopped worrying about making sound. So I don't know if it was out loud or not out loud.
So the issue for me is not so much whether it actually is out loud or not out loud, but whether you experience it as being
I
out loud
definitely
or not.
experienced it as being out loud. I mean, maybe we should be a little bit careful about this, though. What I mean is, I heard those words, and I heard them auditorially in the same way that I would hear them if I were to say them right now out loud into this microphone. But when I experience out loud speaking as out loud, that's different because when I know that I'm speaking out loud, like right now, well, it's more complicated than that. Supposing I'm quiet for a while and then I want to say something to you, and I want it to be out loud because I want you to hear it, I will pay attention to the kind of my mouth and my throat as a way of just monitoring that was out loud. I wasn't doing that. Right. So like conscious, intentional, I know that's not what you're interested in, but I'm just telling you this. Conscious, intentional out loud is one way, and let's call it happens to be out loud is a different thing, because the latter does not involve me paying attention to the out loudness of it, especially what's happening here in my body. The other thing I started to say and then stopped, but maybe I need to say it, is so in this conversation, for example, it's not that I'm constantly monitoring. Once I've kind of consciously turned that switch on, I don't have to keep paying attention to my mouth unless I have a moment of doubt. So knowing that I'm talking to you all, knowing that there's a microphone in front of me and I have to actually make the air vibrate in order for the message to get to you, I'll start, whenever we started a half hour ago, I will say to myself, this is out loud now, and I'll monitor here to know that I'm saying it out loud. But I don't have to keep monitoring. Like once I've started doing that, it just keeps happening. Unless I have a moment of doubt, or if I'm quiet for a long time, then I may have to think about it again explicitly. So the explicit let this be out loud thought happens at the beginning, and there may be moments where it has to happen again, but typically no. So for example, when I'm teaching a class, as I will be in an hour and a half, as I'm walking into the classroom, I will say to myself, this has to be out loud. And I'll monitor the very beginning of the class, but then I don't have to keep monitoring it. It just happens naturally after that. Why did I say all that? This was not like that. I was not monitoring whether it's out loud or not, but I definitely heard the words.
So let me see.
Maybe I just made it worse. I
Let
don't
me
know.
see what I understand about that. No, I think this is very helpful to me. So what there is there's intentionally out loud, which begins with a monitoring of my.
My jaw and my voice box.
Okay. And then there is intentionally silent. And then there is indeterminately allowed and silent, where I don't monitor, and maybe it's allowed and maybe it's not. I don't really know.
Right. And I do know from experience that sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. That I know, just as a matter of fact about my personal history in the world.
But at the particular moment, it doesn't occur to me. If it didn't occur to me to put it into this allowed category, then it wouldn't occur to me to monitor whether it was, or to
Correct.
recognize whether it was allowed or not.
Correct.
So I can put it into either category. If I put it into the allowed category, I'm going to monitor my vocal apparatus,
At least initially, yes.
at least initially. Okay.
And that's actually also true if I'm going to put it into the not out loud category. If I'm intentionally, like in the first beep, if I'm intentionally putting it in the not out loud category, I'm also going to monitor to make sure I don't say it out loud. But the difference there is if I intentionally put something into the not out loud category, I don't hear it. I think that's true in general, and I know it's true of the first beat that we talked about today.
So the first beep that we talked about, the speaking aspect of it was it's eared, not handed.
Correct.
That
Those
was
are the words. That was intentionally not out
intentionally
loud.
not out loud. And we didn't talk at that time that I recall about, well, I monitored my vocal apparatus to ensure.
Um, but yeah, I was paying attention, but it's true that I was paying attention to those things, but I didn't think of that as I guess I just thought of that as kind of wrapped up in the I'm doing this intentionally and
Intentionally,
conscionally. Yeah.
premeditatedly, intentionally. What that means is, at least in part, I'm going to monitor my
Yes. Yes.
vocal apparatus. Got it.
But I wasn't, I guess in part because nothing was actually happening there. That wasn't like motion in my mouth or a feeling in my voice box was not part of my experience because those things weren't happening.
Right. So but I somehow, I probably habitually or whatever was monitoring that stuff to make sure that I was successfully
Yes,
accomplishing what I was premeditatedly setting out to do. Something like
exactly.
that. I got it.
Yes.
Okay. And that I'm guessing is the answer to the question that Agnes was asking. They're in the ballpark of that anyway. Is that
Maybe
right?
so. I'm terrible at remembering these things. I'd have to go back and hear the question again.
But we're on to number two, which is fuck you, and I think I stepped on Agnes's question. So this is Agnes's beep if she wants it.
Um, I mean, I think you asked all the questions that I wanted to ask
Yeah,
about
sorry about that. I get
that's okay.
I get carried away.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, I
But
guess
you made a poem in the process, so that's good. No one else picked up on that.
no, I
Sorry.
missed it. The poem.
We're on to number two, which is fuck you.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I'm hyper attentive to these things. Sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. Go on.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it. Um, so I am curious about um what is part of the experience. I can't remember how Russ puts it, but the experience in question, the moment before the beep. Um, you mentioned that that you saw, here's what professionals who search for borate bought, and that um,
That was before, I would
so
say
that's not part of this
by our
experience.
usual reckoning, I think that's not part of the experience.
That's part of the background.
Yeah.
And then was the closing of the browser, was that part of the
Yes, I was doing that at the same time that I was saying, yeah.
Okay, okay. And
That was kind of the physical manifestation of my words was making them go away.
was that part was the prominent thing the fuck you, or
It was all one thing. I
it was
don't think
all one
anything
thing?
I don't think anything was more prominent than the other.
Okay.
It was a gesture and words that all were pointing at the same target.
Was the closing of the browser window, was that were you experiencing that as like a tactile thing
Nope, I was
or a
experiencing that
visual
as
thing?
close the window.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the nature of the experience. It was that's conceptual, I guess, rather than perceptual. Obviously, I was touching the phone, but I wasn't really feeling my. I don't even know what finger I used to do it. Um, that wasn't really the part of what I was aware of in the moment. I was aware of closing the window.
So when you say that you were aware of closing the window, were you aware of like your agency in making the window close? Is that
Yes,
what you mean
yes,
by
yes. I
that?
was intentionally. Yeah, yeah. That's probably a better way to say it than what I said a second ago. I said it was conceptual rather than perceptual, but more precisely, yes, I was aware of myself being the agent who is doing this. I wasn't thinking those thoughts. I am now the agent
Mhm,
who is doing this.
mhm.
But yes, it was very much my own ego, and some generic sense of ego was very present to me at that moment as I was doing this. It was me that was doing it.
I'm good with that.
So I'm not sure that I understood that. Does me that's doing it mean that I am aware of Michael, or does this mean I am enthusiastically closing the window? That's the
No, more the latter. I mean, I'm not thinking about myself, but
so this is an
um,
emphatic closing
yeah, yeah.
rather than a Michael is
But
emphatically
it
closing.
was not at all a passive experience. It was an action that I was performing, and I experienced it as a performance of an action, not as I wasn't witnessing this happen. I was making it happen
Okay. With an exclamation point.
with an exclamation point.
And I think I'm good about that.
Okay, number three.
Yeah.
I was looking at a book title. It was on a computer screen. Um, I was at work at this point. It was on a computer screen, but I was looking at a picture of a book. Um, and the title of the book had, I can't even read my own writing right now, but it doesn't matter. I know the word that matters in the title is the word stratification. Um, so I was seeing the word stratification. My eyes had kind of paid extra attention to that word, and also behind that word on the kind of there was that word was on the cover in front of or on top of or whatever, I'm not sure how you say it, a picture, and the picture was um, students who were ostensibly graduating. They were wearing mortarboards, and I had paused on the word stratification and on the students who were right behind it, so they were both in my visual. I could see both at the same time, and it all looked, and I was kind of reflecting on this, not in a meta way, but it all looked very unreal. Like the word stratification felt like it wasn't really a word, and the students wearing the mortar, not unreal isn't the right word. It all looked ridiculous. I think that's a better way of saying it. So the word stratification just looked like nonsense to me, like that's not a word. And the students wearing the mortarboards, I was just kind of, I wasn't having any explicit worded thoughts, but they just looked bizarre. Like what are these, like just the whole bizarreness of wearing a mortarboard. Like why would we do that? It's ridiculous. That kind of reaction I was having, but not with any of those words. I'm now trying to put words into to describe my sense of ridiculousness of the scene that I was seeing, and my sense of those letters in that word stratification just being sort of random letters that someone put together that's not really a word.
So the physical word that would be recognized as a by somebody who was reading that word was stratification.
Correct.
And do you, at this particular moment, recognize this word as stratification? And is this a semantically meaningful word to you, or is it just I see the letters and the ridiculousness of the visual display is what's
Yeah,
prominent to you?
so just prior to the beep, I had read it, and I read it with understanding. I knew what this book was about. Um, but in the moment of the beep, I had kind of I'd gotten past that, and I was just looking at the word, and it just looked like it wasn't a word to me. The meaning had gone, had gone. It was just letters that didn't look like they constituted a word.
So at the moment of the beep, I see randomly ridiculous letters,
Yes,
which in reality are the word stratification, but that is not my, and I knew that a moment ago. But at the moment, I see a an array of ridiculous letters.
right. I mean, I think I know this is not the right way to say this, or not in the spirit of what we're doing, but I feel like other people, with respect to words, have something like this experience where you see a word that's a word, but then it feels like it's not a word for a moment. Am I just being crazy when I say people have this experience?
Well, I was gonna, if I can interject, I mean, I was gonna ask a question which I assumed was going to be a banned
I
question.
know, and I also shouldn't have said that, but I'm actually, independently of what we're talking about, I'm kind of curious. Like, is this something that happens to
Well,
people where they see a word and they're like, wait a minute, that's not a word?
So the answer to that is yes, that does sometimes happen,
Okay.
and but not very often. I would say it is remarkable to me when somebody encounters a word that is stripped of its semantic meaning. That's interesting to me. That is not words generally come with their semantic meaning pretty tightly tied to it.
Right. Well, and that's true for me too. I mean, most times when I see a word, I don't even think of it as being a word. The meaning just kind of comes to mind without even any effort.
Right. That's the way it usually is.
But in this particular case, that's not what was going on. Even though a second ago that's exactly what happened when I read the title. But then for whatever reason, and I have no idea, my eyes went back after I read the whole title. My eyes went back to stratification, and it suddenly appeared not word-like all of a sudden.
So what I understand is that it's not it is more or less than just not word like. It's that I see letters.
Yes, no, I definitely was seeing letters, but they
So
weren't constituting a word.
right. And that's pretty unusual, I would say. The to zoom in on the letters or to see the array of letters without their word semanticnesses
Right. Well,
is
that's what was going on, and then
very
also
unusual.
the whole mortarboard thing was. I still now I think about it again. I'm again thinking how did this become a thing?
And so does this seem like two seeings at the same time? I'm seeing these letters and I'm seeing the mortarboard, or does it seem like one thing? I'm seeing letters and
No,
mortarboard.
it's two different things. They're both in my visual field, so I guess in some sense it's all one experience. But no, they were pretty well separated conceptually in my experience.
So I see ridiculous letters and I see ridiculous mortarboards,
Yes.
and those two things share the ridiculousness aspect, whatever that is, which we haven't yet quite figured out.
Right.
But they're not. It's not like I'm seeing letters out there among the mortarboards.
No.
I am seeing two. There's two separate organized seeings that
Yes.
share something in common, which is the ridiculous.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not sure I got the gist of the ridiculous.
So in the case of the word, it was ridiculous may not be quite the right term. It was just what we've already said. It was not a word. It just looked like someone had randomly thrown letters onto the front of this thing. That's not ridiculous exactly, but it's not. It doesn't make any sense. It's just letters,
Nonsensical.
nonsensical. And nonsensical might actually be not a crazy way to describe the experience of the mortarboards either.
Okay.
Um, but there, I think ridiculous would be more appropriate. It struck me as ridiculous that people would put these things on their heads. So I reacted to seeing that in the same way that you might react if they had all had bananas on their heads or something.
And so it was particularly about the mortarboards.
Yes.
And I see that as ridiculous. This is not like I have a separate thought. Oh, look how ridiculous those
No, it's
mortarboards
just
are. I
just
see ridiculous headwear.
yes. There was no, I don't think there was any, certainly I couldn't even in the moment after the beep recall any thought,
Okay.
any explicit thinking. It was just an experience of this is very strange. What's going on here?
And is it the headwear that's strange?
Yes.
So it's not like there are other features, no doubt, of these people, what they're
I don't even know what the other features were. I was
male or
totally
female or black or white or whatever. I
no
don't know.
idea I have any of that. I was
So this
focused
is
on,
about the headwear,
yep,
ridiculous headwear and nonsensical letters,
yep.
seen as two separate, simultaneous, visually in the same place, but separate experiences.
Yeah, they weren't really, I mean, they were visually in the same place, but there was no real connection in my mind between these two things.
Okay.
Except the fact that they were both being seen at the same time.
Okay. And is there a connection between this nonsensic slash ridiculousness and the rest of the book, the title of the book, or is that not an irrelevant question to ask?
No, I wasn't even looking at the rest of the title. I mean, I had just read it, but I hadn't read it with any great interest, so it's not. I didn't pay that much attention to what the title was, but I had just read it and I understand or understood. I don't remember what the title is now, but I'm sure I understood in the moment. I didn't pause because I wasn't getting what the title was saying or something like that.
So for whatever reason, and that reason is not present to me at the moment of the beep, but there's no doubt some psychological theory that somebody could advance to say why I was thinking about this. But as far as my experience is concerned, I am seeing two simultaneous, in some ways similar, but in most ways different scenes. One nonsensical letters and the other ridiculous headwear. And what makes them the same is that the similarity between nonsensical and ridiculous. But other than that, they seem like two separate simultaneous experiences.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm good about that.
I have a question about the nonsensicality of the word. So one way of understanding it is, sorry, the nonsensicality of the array of letters.
Mhm.
One way of understanding that would be to say that you see the array of letters still as a word, but the word is nonsense, right? So maybe you even still read stratification, but that has lost meaning. And maybe to bring this back to the example that you gave before, if you take an ordinary word and you just say it over and over and over and over and over again, it appears, or at least to me, to be nonsensical, to have kind of lost its meaning.
Hmm.
Or is it nonsensical as in it's just, you're not even seeing a word at all. You're just seeing an array of letters. And so that the letters happen to be the letters of stratification, but they could easily have been like Q, T, S, Z, like just any random string of letters that in the English language would have no plausible wordiness.
Yeah, I think it's the latter more than the former.
Okay.
I certainly hadn't been reading it over and over again, but I
Mhm.
get that you weren't suggesting that. I'm just saying
Mhm. Yeah.
and I am kind of familiar with what you just described. I mean, I think the same thing happens to me if I repeat something too many times, it starts to feel like nonsense. And maybe it was nonsense to begin with, but um, this was more like it's a random collection of letters. Now, there must have been some residual sense of it should be a word. Otherwise, why would a random collection of letters be striking in any way? But I wasn't thinking that. It just felt random. It felt like
So it
someone
didn't
could
have
have
the
just spilled some letters onto the front of this book, and I was looking at the letters that they had spilled onto the front.
So it was nonsensical in the sense that the letters didn't even have the quality of being a word.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that I would say is what makes this different from the repeating a word and word and word and word and word. The whole word disappears when that happens. It doesn't break in. It doesn't disintegrate into its letters usually.
I
Right.
see.
This
Okay.
is the
Okay. I'm not sure that that statement is true of me, but I get what you're saying. I mean, we're not talking about a real experience at this point, so I don't
Right.
know. But
right. So I think we've got it. I'm happy with this anyway.
Me too.
Number
okay.
4, and this is your beep, and I'll try to honor that. It's hard for me.
I was sitting in the aforementioned Chris's office in his chair. I was helping him with his laptop. Um, and so that's the context. I had his laptop in my lap, and there were two things going on. I was saying to him, I could never connect to eduroam. So I was saying those words. The beep happened after those words, but very soon after those words. And they were out loud. He heard me. And that's probably, I mean, yeah, they were out loud. He heard me. Um, and I heard my own words as well. And then while I was saying that, and and afterwards, I was looking at the word eduroam, edu roam, in a drop-down menu on his laptop. I was looking at that particular word, and a kind of a copy of that word had emerged from the screen and was like sitting like an inch or so in front of the word that was on the screen. I was seeing both of those. I was seeing the one on the screen, and I was seeing the one about an inch in front of it. It wasn't moving. It just kind of popped out and was sitting there in front of the screen and in front of the word eduroam that was also on the screen.
Was the word in front of the eduroam identical to eduroam?
Yes, it was a perfect copy.
Like a perfect copy?
Yeah.
And you're seeing it as 1 inch in front. So am I understanding correctly that the eduroam in front of the screen is like outside of the screen rather
Yes.
than...
Yeah, it came out, I mean, inch, who knows, but not a lot. But I'm using inch to mean a little bit, not a lot. But it had come. Sorry, I'm doing something with my hands. I just realized you can't see. So it had, like, if the word eduroam was right here on the screen, then, and my finger is the word eduroam, then it kind of like that. It had popped out, so I could see the one on the screen, and I could see also the one, the copy of it that was in front of the screen.
Did was this like a static experience, or was there any kind of...
Yeah, it was static until the beeper went off. And then I looked away to shut the beeper off.
So the reason that what I mean by that is I was wondering whether you're seeing the screen, eduroam on the screen, static eduroam.
Yeah, it wasn't moving.
So that was one question. But then another question that I had was whether there's any experience of like perspective.
Yes.
So in other words, and I don't know if this was the case or not, whether if you like moved your head up, you would kind of see over one of the edgerooms to the other one.
Well, I could see both of them, and they
Mhm.
weren't on top of each other. The one had, so the laptop was kind of lower than
Mhm.
it was in my lap. And so when the copy popped out, because of my angle
Mhm.
to the
Mhm.
screen, I could see both. It was as if it had popped straight out, like perpendicular to the screen. But since
Mhm.
my eyes were looking
Mhm.
down on the screen at a pretty sharp angle because it was down in my lap, I could see both of them.
Mhm.
If that
And that's
makes
how you can see that one was like in front of
Yeah,
the...
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So I'm good with that part of it.
I have a couple of questions about that. So do you see this popping as in motion? I see it coming out, or is it just there?
I did not see it come out,
Okay.
um, which is unusual because this sort of thing happens not super often, but sometimes. And usually it's more like it emerges.
Okay.
Now, I was talking at the same time, so maybe it did emerge and I just missed that part.
And as far as your experience is concerned, are the two eduromes both real?
As far as my experience is concerned, not as far as my knowledge is concerned.
Right.
Yes, there's no difference in their degree of out there in the worldness as
So I,
experienced.
I in some way know, knowledge-wise, that the popped out edurome is not real.
I do know that. Yes.
But experientially, in the moment, I see it as real as the one on the
And I
screen.
wasn't thinking about its non-reality in the moment. What I say I knew it, all I mean is if you had interrupted my train of thought and asked me in the moment, are they both real or is one real? And if so, which one's real and which one's not real? I would have been able to answer that question very easily.
Okay. That's what I understand. But what I want to be clear is that if nobody's asking that question, what I am seeing is two real eduromes.
Yes. I mean, if nobody, including myself, asked that question,
Right.
then that's what I'm seeing. And I wasn't asking myself that question. I wasn't really paying that much. I mean, I wasn't paying that much attention, to be honest. I mean, I was more, even though that's what I was seeing in the moment, I'm faithfully reporting to you what was going on. My concern in the moment was not, I wasn't particularly concerned with Eduroam in the moment. That concern was fleeting. I was more concerned to help Chris with his laptop. So I wasn't pausing to think about my experience at all. If I had paused for half a second, I would have said, no, of course that's not real.
So that is the distinction that I want to be clear about, and I think I am clear about it. That
Okay.
at the moment, so I'm going to restate it just to make sure. At the moment of the beep, I am having visual experience that is interrupted by the beep interrupts the visual experience, and the visual experience is of seeing two eduromes, which experientially at the moment of the beep are equally real,
Yes,
even
correct.
though one of them is real and one of them is imaginary.
And I had just finished saying, I don't know, I mean, this was really just finished, so it really is kind of right before the beep. I had just finished saying, I can never connect to Eduroam.
Right. And does the popped out edurome have any depth to it at all? You're seeing past it at an angle, you said.
You mean, no, it doesn't have any depth. It's two-dimensional,
Okay.
or it's very thin, or whatever. I mean, it's not really two-dimensional, I guess it couldn't be, but it's very thin.
Okay. And the same font, same
Yeah, it's a perfect copy.
and and the on the screen edurome has the rest of the screen around the letters edurome.
Right.
Does is that true of the popped out edurome as well?
No, it's just the letters.
So the letters of edurome have popped out.
Right. So the screen, maybe this helps, I don't know. The screen was mostly dark, mostly black or something close to black. The words on the screen were white, and the one that popped out was also white.
But the ones that popped out are the letters EDU without the screen surrounding them.
Correct.
Okay.
So you could kind of see through the letters as well. Like there is no bit of background. Like
You
you
could,
could see like R, you could see through like
I mean,
the
I wasn't really looking closely enough to
Mhm.
like look through the O in Rome, but yes, there was nothing. So in the O of Rome, for example, it wasn't black in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he can see through it. That would be that
I
would be
wasn't looking through it.
a
So
real world question.
right.
In the real world, if a letter doesn't have anything in the middle of it, you can see through it. But that is not necessarily the case in an imaginary world. In the imaginary world, there's nothing in the middle, but that doesn't mean you can see through it.
That's a fair statement. And I wasn't trying to see through it because I didn't need to. And this was also quite a fleeting experience. I wasn't really paying careful attention to it. Because I say that wasn't my concern at the moment. Um, but I am confident in saying that there was no blackness involved. It was just the white part, just the white letters themselves that had popped out.
So you've had at least one other example that I can remember, which was the facade of the house across the street on the first
So
sampling day.
that was very similar, except I was paying much more attention to that than I was paying to this.
Yeah.
That that was I was really watching that transpire, and it was also there was motion involved in that case. There was not motion involved in this case. So it's two. You're right. There's a certain kind of similarity here, but this was a fleeting experience. I wasn't paying much attention to it. It wasn't my concern at the time. The other one was I was watching it. I was paying attention to what was going on. Sorry, maybe I didn't address your question. I started answering your question before you even asked it.
So I have encountered similar things with other sampling, and I have come to call them creative seeing. And I'm wondering whether that term means whether that seems.
I mean, I have my own word for it, which is magic mind, but you didn't like that when I used it before, I think.
I didn't like it because it didn't refer to the seeing aspect, which it seemed like it was this is a seeing
Right,
thing.
right. No,
Magic
I get
seeing.
that. That's more, it's, yeah,
I I I hit on the word creative seeing when I read about it is because I didn't want it to be pejorative. I didn't, but I wanted it to convey that it wasn't real either. But I did, but the unreality of it isn't present in the moment.
correct.
That's
So this is what will maybe certify me as a crazy person in your mind. But when I say something is real or not, all I mean is other people would also see it if they looked or hear it if they listened or whatever. That's a survival technique for me, if you like. But that's when I say something's real, I mean, as far as I can tell, everyone else with functioning perceptual apparatus would also have a similar experience to mine. Not experience in your sense, Russ, but just somehow they would see this thing, they would acknowledge that it's there, that sort of thing.
so I am interested in that too. So in the like in the you had a beep where you said you were sitting on a stump and thinking about sending your son.
Right.
And in that situation, do you experience the stump as real?
Well, I wasn't really experiencing the stump, but I mean, that's where I was sitting, but I wasn't, do I experience the stump as real? Yes. I
And what
experience this chair as real. So I understand, for example, that if I asked my wife to come upstairs and sit in the chair, she wouldn't look at me like, what are you talking about?
so I guess the question is when you said a minute ago, what I mean by real is that other people would have the same experiences I've had.
Hmm. I
That
was trying
you
to illustrate that by saying if I were to ask my wife to come sit in the chair, it would be a normal request that she would not question, like whether she would be able to do that or what I was asking her or something like that. But if I were
and
to say, behold, the second copy of Eduroam, I wouldn't say that to anyone because they would say, what are you talking about?
this it's taken us pretty far away from this particular beat, but it is sort of at the heart of the deal. So there's something about the chair that leads you to suspect that your wife would come and sit in without complaint, which is different from, well, your wife wouldn't see the Jerome letters suspended above the screen. So there's,
Correct. This is, I would say, a hard won distinction for me. And I've paid a heavy price at certain times in my life for failing to make this distinction, especially in my 20s. Um, and I'm 500% better at it now than I was then. Um, but I'm not 100% accurate even now. I have sometimes asked my wife or communicated with her in some way, and she has to respond to me by saying, Michael, that's not real.
No, Michael, that's not real.
That's more commonly with sounds. So I have, for example, thought that she had something. So she keeps her computer in a kind of a desk near the kitchen, and I have occasionally asked her to turn the computer down or something like that, and her response is, "There's no computer noise happening right now." All of which is to say, I'm not 100% accurate at this.
Right.
So I'm telling you my best guess. I think it's a pretty good guess in the cases. It's not a guess. I'm telling you my best estimate. I'm pretty confident in those estimates in the cases when I've needed to make that in order to communicate my experience to you. But it's not 100%.
Even now.
Even now. But I know how the world works. I almost got a PhD in physics. I understand that words on the screen don't just pop out like that. I understand that the nature of that experience and the nature of the way computer screens and worlds work, that is very unlikely to be the kind of thing that I could say, hey, Chris, look at this extra word. But I don't experience it as unreal. I just know that it's not real.
Right. I understand that.
Good.
I
Um,
understand that probably in the same way that you understand it, as a fact rather than as an experiential reality.
um, I have to go
Okay, good. So
because
shall
I
we
have
do
to
this?
teach.
Shall we do it again?
Sure.